This is Meredith for Real, the Curious Introvert, and I'm Meredith. Here we explore the taboo and paradoxical aspects of society. I explore the topics that people think about but don't ask about. The results give you the nuanced answers you crave, not just the Google results making headlines. My mission, and yours if you choose to accept it, is to make a more curious future for everyone. Each episode is different, so bring your ADD and your earbuds and have a look around. So this is a question that we definitely think about but don't ask about. How do we handle the feelings of sadness when they're directly connected to the holiday rituals that are supposed to be joyful? The question becomes even more complicated when the source of the grief is a less overtly labeled reason for mourning, like loss of an opportunity or being estranged from a loved one or the loss of a friendship. My guest is a medical doctor, so you'll not only hear the physical symptoms that might be connected to the grief you're just powering through unknowingly, but also ideas on how to make room for that grief itself among all the festivities that come with the holidays. And as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode. A great place to do that is my private Facebook group. Each week we have a casual discussion related to the most recent episode. You can also weigh in on future topics and participate in giveaways. Search MFR Curious Insiders on Facebook or click the link in the episode description. Lastly, if you end up liking this episode, you'll also like the one I did with a PhD psychologist about the difference between sadness and depression. That's episode 88. All right, friends, keep it curious. The holidays are a time of joy, tradition, and gathering. But how do we deck the halls when we're grieving? The permanent absence of someone who used to be present at events or even the loss of a relationship can be amplified by all the festivities and million cheesy Hallmark movies. My next guest is an unexpected advocate for the grieving. She's a medical doctor who helps her patients recognize and heal from the complexities of grief and living. And today we're going to explore the question, how do we welcome grief in moments of joy? Army veteran, death doula, board-certified doctor of osteopathic medicine, Dr. Alexys Hillman. Thank you for being here.
Hey, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
So why would a medical doctor be interested in grief?
So a lot of times when we think of medical doctors, we think of doctors who are dealing just with body issues. And we skip over the part where we recognize that the brain and the mind are not just part of the body, but they can interact and even interfere with the body. And where it came to my attention was when I was doing, especially full spectrum family practice, when I was seeing disability evaluations for the state of Florida, a lot of what was coming up was grief. And it's not just grief for a person like, oh, I lost my spouse, I lost my parent, I lost a child, but, I lost my function, I lost my house, I lost my job because I couldn't keep up with the task. My body was failing me. And it was the loss of those hopes, dreams, and expectations. And as I interviewed them and talked to them and, okay, well, let's get to the bottom of what's going on, a lot of it coming out was unresolved grief, unaddressed grief. And, people really don't appreciate just how much of an impact it can have on you. Even just if you say, well, I have trouble sleeping. Well, if you're not sleeping, that's going to impact your mood. That's going to impact your focus, your ability to think straight. Your body's going to feel weak. It's not going to process sugar and food and nutrients the way it's supposed to because you haven't processed all of the previous day's byproducts the way you're supposed to. So we really think of the mind and body as separate, but they're really not.
So as a medical doctor, when you're talking with patients like these, I've spent some time with you, so I know your heart. So don't take this question the wrong way, but
no, go for it.
Why wouldn't you just refer them to a psychologist?
Well, the fact of the matter is we are short on psychologists. We are short on mental health professionals. And when I trained in family medicine, they talk about full spectrum family medicine from the cradle to the grave. And, especially in the Army, we were encouraged to handle as much of medicine as we could at the family medicine level before we referred out. So it was always kind of ingrained in me that, well, you should take a stab at handling this if it's within your wheelhouse. I did psychology as my undergrad. I've always been very interested in how the mind works. I'm very interested in holistic health. So grief really, it's part of the life cycle. It's part of that cradle to grave. It should be something that doctors are prepared to deal with, at least to diagnose it, to recognize it, to say, hey, here's some things that you can do. And your grief is normal. Or in the case of prolonged bereavement, okay, your grief maybe isn't normal. Maybe it is keeping you from living a high quality life. And maybe we should get you some extra help for this.
How have you seen grief show up in people's bodies in the years of your practice?
So a lot of times it's going to show up as muscle tension.
Really?
So really, yes. So people will feel like my neck is just tight and I feel like I can't relax my shoulders down. Some people experience palpitations out of nowhere. They'll start freaking out and just, I can't slow my heart down and it's making me dizzy and I feel like I can't catch my breath. Maybe they aren't going into a full panic attack, but they feel like they're kind of leading up to it. In diabetics, we may see that suddenly where their sugars were controlled or, a little above where we wanted to be, suddenly it's escalating. And, they haven't changed their diet or they have changed it in response to emotional eating. Their sugars will start to spike and they'll get those symptoms of fatigue and muscle weakness and just not feeling right. They're urinating more, they're drinking more, so it's really very person dependent. But when you trace it back, it actually makes sense.
How do you tell the difference between something that is stemming from an emotion versus something that is stemming from a mechanical origin in the body?
So it can be hard to tell. Common principle in medicine is that you have to rule out the physical first before you attribute it to the psychological. So in the instance of someone having palpitations, especially if they fall within a certain age range or if they're pregnant, you really have to rule out and make sure that they don't have like a new onset high blood pressure. They don't have a new onset cardiomyopathy. They don't have AFib. They're not having a heart attack. You do have to show that that is not occurring because grief may not kill you, but a heart attack might. So you really want to rule out the things that are going to kill you first.
Yeah. Do you ever have patients that once you tell them, hey, I think this is because of some unresolved grief, we show you're not having a heart attack, for example, that they react in a way that is like they just pick up their coat and they go, okay, well, I'm out of here. I'm just going to soldier on, because if it's just in my head, then it's no big deal.
I see that sometimes with men, especially if they have someone in the appointment with them. They don't necessarily want to grief. No, I'm fine. Women are a little more open to the possibility that, oh, you think so? You really think so? But other people, it's something that they've suspected. They just wanted an outside set of ears and eyes to look at it and say, no, I think this is real.
And if someone does decide to soldier on without addressing the prolonged bereavement, like you said, what are the consequences of unresolved grief in the body?
So a lot of the just ongoing muscle tension, if you're diabetic, you may find it harder to control your blood sugars, especially if the grief is interfering with your motivation to control your diet, to exercise regularly, if it's interfering with your sleep. Those things just kind of progress, and we can go down all those routes about, okay, well, what are the complications of uncontrolled diabetes? What are the complications of uncontrolled high blood pressure? All of those are, cardiovascular risk factors for things like heart attack and stroke. In Japan, don't hold me to saying what the name of this is, but they do actually have a broken heart syndrome where you essentially die of grief. And you hear these stories, what is it? Carrie Fisher and Debbie Reynolds. They died within days of each other. And there was that question, okay, well, was it a broken heart syndrome that caused Debbie Reynolds to die after her daughter, Carrie Fisher? Because they were so close. So you hear about these stories, and whether it's, it caused a heart attack, it, was a final straw of an underlying condition, or it was just a discrete case of grief, you may or may not ever know.
I mean, it kind of doesn't matter, it sounds like, if it's just mechanical or if it's emotional, because the consequences are a shorter life regardless.
They can very much be the same or very similar. Yeah.
How do you know if your grief is resolved?
So part of it is going to be, how do you feel when that person or that topic is brought up? Because at some point, when your grief is resolved, you're going to be able to talk about that person without just completely falling to pieces. I see people that you just bring up their mother, you just bring up their child, you just touch on that subject and they're a puddle on the floor. And, you're left like, okay, get the mop, get the tissues. Here we go. All right. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to touch a nerve. Other people, they might feel sad. They might feel bittersweet, and that's perfectly fine, but they're better able to talk about it, and they're able to touch on those happier times and have those happy memories come forward, as opposed to just the sad ones or just the negative ones or just the regrets.
And that example is probably more geared towards people who lost someone that they loved, right? Because that's kind of an obvious, more commonly explained form of grief, of when someone dies and that you loved them. I'm curious, what would that look like if it was another form of grief, an estrangement, like somebody that you're angry at, and then you see a photo or it gets brought up? Is the sign of resolved grief in that case a neutrality towards that individual, or does it also need to be of the happy times?
Oh, you ask such excellent questions. I love it. I love it. Oh, that could be a topic of its own.
Mm-hmm.
So with estrangement, you may see more neutral reactions, or you may see the person just completely shut down.
Yeah.
Like they are not going there. They do not have the mental bandwidth to deal with that topic. They may actually get aggressive towards you. Well, why are you bringing them up? Why are we talking about this? Just getting angry. And I always tell my patients, I always tell my kids, anger is a cover emotion.
Mm-hmm.
What is under the anger? Is it disappointment? Is it frustration? Is it fear? Is it sadness? Is it anticipation? Is it, something else? So whenever I'm dealing with someone who seems really angry or says they're angry, okay, well, can you tell me kind of what's underneath that? What is it that's making you angry? Are you disappointed in this person or sad, or what's going on? And once you get to that underlying emotion, anger is hard to work with.
Yeah.
Because it's a spiky emotion. It's a get away from me kind of emotion. But disappointment, I can work with. Frustration, I can work with. Sadness, we can work with. Anger, not so much.
Yeah, I would imagine denial is tough too, because when I think about the lifespan of grief, it's so different for every person. And specifically in that anger category, I'm thinking about, for example, a betrayal. That is grievy is not a word, but we're going to make it a word today. It's very grievy.
I like it. I like it.
You like it? Okay, great. Grievy. It's very grievy. But after so many years go by, I think it's tempting for some people to think, okay, I should be over that. And therefore it gets really buried. And even the people in that person's community might say, yeah, you should be over that. Deal with that, would you? And so that's got to be sticky as well, because the lines get blurred between how you really feel and how you should feel. I can't even begin to imagine how you as a doctor with a patient in your office would begin to unpack that.
So I really let them guide it. You tell me what you're thinking. I'm not here to tell you whether you're right or wrong. I'm here as a sounding board. I am here to give you suggestions for how to cope with what it is exactly that's bothering you. If you're being bothered by the palpitations or being unable to sleep, okay, well, while we're working on this, here's some tips so that you can actually get some sleep and have the mental bandwidth to further deal with this.
Ooh,
but,
okay.
You brought up a really excellent point about when especially others are telling you, yeah, you should be over this, because what really makes recovery from grief messy, if you want to call it recovery from grief, is people sometimes see, especially estrangement or loss of opportunities or betrayal or, so on and so forth. They see it as a maturity issue. Like, I'm an adult, like, get over it.
Yeah.
Like, I should move on. And sometimes the impression is given that it's a childish thing to hold on to these emotions, these events, just get past it. You're an adult, suck it up, drive on. We see it especially a lot in veterans who are, hey, snowflake, get up, put your boots back on, let's go. And I hate to say that, but it's true. That's the military mindset of get your boots back on, get your ruck on, get up and get moving, move on with life. And maybe it's, quote unquote, childish, but what has helped for some of my patients to imagine is their inner child. What is it that your inner child needs? Sometimes talking to patients and hearing about their history and seeing where their train of thought kind of takes them, you realize, oh, would you like to hear what I'm hearing? Would you like me to tell you what I'm hearing? I'm hearing that you did not have a lot of security as a child. You did not have someone consistently having your back as a child. And this person did that for you. This person had your back and now they're gone, whether that because they died or they betrayed you or, so what I'm hearing is your inner child craves security. Your inner child craves support and validation and so on and so forth. That image helps some people. It doesn't help other people, but sometimes you got to try different techniques. I have one person, two people actually. Sometimes I get kind of a mental image of where they are in their life. So I approached one person. I was like, would you be okay if I drew what I see of where you are right now? And they're like, okay, fine. I'll humor the doctor. Sure. So I drew what I saw, and what I saw was their person had, fallen off a cliff and they were there still reaching for them, even though they were no longer in the picture. They were all the way at the bottom off the page, and their support system was walking away. And as soon as I showed that to them, they were like, I see it. I recognize this. Not every image works for everybody, but sometimes if you approach it from different angles, you can finally find that in where you're able to reach inside past the shell and say, is it right here? And it's kind of like touching a nerve and they're like, yeah, that's it right there.
I think we're so used to our doctor's appointments feeling very not human. And so I'm just kind of observing within myself right now how human this is. And I'm like, this is a doctor's appointment? And it shouldn't be that shocking. But I want to move on to the types of grief. And I'm hoping that you can give some tips because, as we bring this stuff up, I'm sure people are already feeling connected to different things that we're saying. And I would hate for people to feel bummed out and then not have some tools on how to resolve that. Because grief, the idea that grief is with us forever is already a heavy blanket, but to experience those emotions amplified because of the holidays or really any moment of joy. It doesn't have to be the holidays. It could be a major life event like having a baby or getting married or purchasing a home. To experience those without your person is already sad enough. But these under-recognized types of grief, the first one I would love for you to talk about is estrangement, which we've already kind of alluded to. So paint a picture for what that could look like in a person, both emotionally and, potentially physically.
So estrangement, we're seeing it a lot more lately, with the pandemic hitting, and it brought a lot of people face to face with, okay, well, we don't know who's going to live or die. What kind of life do you want to live? And part of that algorithm or that algebra for some people became, who do I want to keep in my life versus not? And we're seeing a lot more that people are estranged, kind of distancing themselves. They're experiencing estrangement from their parents or their siblings or other people that they perceive as toxic in their life. And you may have had happy memories with those people, and how they perceive the relationship may be different. And you may still be getting messages from them that I don't know what I did wrong. And will you please just talk to me? So what you can see is they may be, for lack of a better word, they may be moody. They may be anxious. They may be more tense. You may notice that, like, some people, you can actually see their shoulders rise as you talk to them when you touch on that topic or you mention messages or the holidays, suddenly they get very defensive, or it's like you see the shutters come down. I'm done with this topic. You may start seeing around certain times of the year that they maybe get more headaches, or they feel more fatigued. They feel more weak. If they have chronic pain issues, their chronic pain might actually worsen. And I don't know what it is. It's not cold. It's not wet, but my knees are just killing me. My back is just killing me worse. Things just seem out of nowhere to be exacerbated. That's a lot of what I see in my practice. It's just, I can't explain. I'm just getting headaches all the time. What, and it's okay. Well, is something stressing you out? And oh, well, my mom actually just texted me and I haven't talked to her in 6 months. Okay. Well, have you tried looking at that? Obviously, again, make sure that there's no red flag symptoms, that something else is going on, but do address that. Okay. Well, has something changed?
Yeah. So what if it's in reverse? Like, how would you suggest a family who is on the receiving side of the estrangement maybe find relief during a time like the holidays?
That can be so hard, especially if you don't get a reason why suddenly they don't want to talk to you. I would say, do your due diligence, try to reach out, try to open some channels. But if they're not open to it, you are just going to make the situation worse. There's always that kind of perception when we're growing up. Just keep pursuing it. Just keep pursuing it. Wear them down. Wear them down. No, because sometimes you just build the wall higher. So as much as it hurts, respect their space. It may not even be you. It may be something else going on. It might be someone around you that they just decided, look, I can't deal with this right now. Or you may be a reminder of something. They just can't deal with it right now. Just respect their space. And what I would say is, if you have a communication with them, let them know that you are there. If they need you, you still love them. You still support them. And when they're ready, you'll be there. And then you just got to let it go. Easy for me to say, but you got to give people their space.
Hey, Curiositors, just a quick pause to show gratitude to our sponsors and give you some special deals. It's that time of year for front porch pumpkins and football barbecues, but here in the southern U.S., mosquitoes can still be an unwanted part of the equation. I've been using Insect's mosquito service since 2019, and I love that they guarantee their work and pollinators are always top of mind. But don't wait to get on their schedule. If you're in the Florida Panhandle or the Gulf Coast of Alabama, give Insect a call, ensec.net. I'll be honest, there are not a ton of podcasts in my rotation, but the Jordan Harbinger Show is one of them. He and his guests weave story and thought with such conversational ease. You get sucked in the best way possible. I recently listened to episode 1031 with guest Dr. Sarah Hill about how birth control rewires women's brains. I love that he chose that topic, and it's so good that you'll want to take notes. I also really love episode 784 with Rami Romani, who shares incredible stories of ancient and modern-day Egypt, including a super intense escape story with him and his wife, and the truth about ancient Egyptian curses. I mean, just from those two episodes, you can see how varied his topics are. You can't go wrong with adding the Jordan Harbinger Show to your rotation. It's incredibly interesting. There's never a dull show. Search for the Jordan Harbinger Show. That's HARB as in boy, IN as in Nancy, GER on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. This show is also supported by the UWF Historic Trust. Don't pick another boring venue for your next work event. Check out one of the Pensacola Historic Trust's 12 museums. Now, if you watch the show on YouTube, you see the beautiful backdrop of Trader John's, the exhibit where I record the show inside the Pensacola Museum of History. Booking an event with the Trust will not just be a memorable event for your guests, but also support the efforts to keep Pensacola's historic charm preserved. Learn more at historicpensacola.org. Now back to the show. Remember to stay till the end where I give you a sneak peek of next week's episode. And for the second category is the more obvious, which is a physical death. That can be so hard during the holidays because the gathering of the people may have been around grandma, like she might have been the organizer and the siblings may have put aside their differences in order for grandma's sake. And then she passes away. And, that can be really, really challenging for a lot of families. Or maybe you hang up an ornament on a tree and it was made by a child that passed away. Or, I could go on and on. But how can families continue to have a relationship with the deceased during the holidays?
So if you had any traditions with them, try to continue those traditions or make a new tradition that includes or acknowledges that person. So some people will suggest, have a space at the dinner table. For my veterans out there, if you've ever been to a military ball, they will set aside a separate table with the empty chair, the slice of lemon, the salt on the dish, the overturned wine glass. Each of it has meaning. Now, you don't have to get that elaborate. You don't have to be, that.
But I think the ceremony is actually really helpful.
Ceremony.
There's so many of us in the United States, especially, I don't know how other places do it, who have so little ritual in our lives, so little ceremony in our lives.
Yes.
And so there's no socially appropriate way to express this grief, and not anymore. In the 1800s, there was very clear ways to express grief and lots of rules, actually. Of course, all the rules were for the women, but, the women, the widows wore black for 2 years at least. And then everyone knew that they were grieving. But in America, the average bereavement from your place of employment is 2 days. So you really have to be creative with how you are going to grieve and then re-grieve.
Yes. Yes. Every person needs to kind of figure this out for themselves. What does it look like to really keep that memory alive and to keep that person there? Some people have like a little altar in their homes, or they will save a space at the table and put like grandma's picture there, or they will bring out grandma's favorite dishes, or, they will find a way to keep grandma involved. I think the biggest thing, if I could give everybody just one piece of advice, if Zoom were about to shut us down right now and I could only say one more thing, it would be let yourself feel what you feel. People feel like, well, I can't cry now. I got stuff to do. The turkey's in the oven and this is going on, that's going on. And, I'm just going to be a downer in a wet blanket at this party and da-da-da. If you need to separate yourself and go have a good cry in the bathroom, go have a good cry in the bathroom. Take your makeup with you, fix your makeup when you're done. I don't think anybody is going to really treat you too harshly, especially in the first year or two of a death. I don't think anyone's really going to treat you too harshly for feeling sad and for having those emotions. And if you have someone around you that you can trust that I'm having a hard time, can you just give me a call sometimes and check on me? Or would you go on a walk with me just around the block? I just need some air. Someone who's going to let you vent, let you get it off your chest, and really just let it out instead of just shoving it back down.
The third area that I want to talk about is unmet expectation. When you brought this up to me when we were chatting off mic, it blew my mind. Can you explain what that looks like for people, examples, because it's definitely an unexpected, under-recognized department of grieving.
Sure. So I'm sure people in the audience are, as soon as I say this, they're going to have someone in mind. Everybody has that family member that when you show up, they're going to ask, oh, when are you getting married? When are you having kids? How's that job going? Did you get that promotion yet? Are you still at that job? What are you doing with your life? Maybe you thought you were going to get a promotion, or maybe you thought you would have moved halfway across the world by now, or you've been struggling with fertility, or you just frankly don't want kids, but grandma wants more grandkids. The holidays can be stressful for that reason, because you're just gearing up to hear about, I don't want to hear about having more kids. I just broke up with my boyfriend. I don't care anymore.
Or they could be gay and they are not out to their family and they have to like make up a story every year,
Exactly. And it can be so stressful. And I feel my own shoulders going up just thinking about these situations that people are getting ready to deal with. But don't don't overly stress yourself out. Like, don't preemptively stress yourself out. That's what family's for. But kind of have some lines prepared for how you're going to shut down a line of questioning, whether it's, I'm not really prepared to discuss that right now, or I'm not really comfortable discussing that right now, or I'd really like to focus on XYZ right now. Sometimes it just comes down to drawing a boundary in the sand. And some family members will respect that, some won't. And you have to have a plan for how you're going to deal with that. If you are someone who, finds themselves single during the holidays, sometimes it can help if you have a friend who is willing to go with you, just to kind of be your wing person, that they're going to swoop in and save you if you need it. Because let's be honest, we all have family members who can't take a hint. Sometimes you just need that support. And if you are going with a spouse, let them know, this is what I'm anticipating. Can we have a signal? And it may seem over the top, it may seem ridiculous, but if you've been in that situation, you recognize there are situations that without a wing person or without a plan, you're just kind of stuck like a deer in the headlights.
Yeah. I'm glad that you're bringing up a wing person, because that's such a good way to help somebody who is in that situation and grieving. It just feels so foreign for people of how to help someone who's grieving. And I'm hoping that you could have some insight, because there's been situations where I know someone who their husband passed away, people kept sending flowers, and the more flowers she got, the more upset she got. Because I don't know, flowers equaled funeral, I guess. I'm not really sure. But like everyone made it worse instead of better. And there's always a, tell me if I can do anything. Well, of course they're not gonna. I know there's no one right thing to say or one right thing to do, but is there a foundational place to start for those of us that want to show love and support to those who are grieving?
So I think the biggest thing I encounter is that just like we don't want to infringe on others, grievers don't want to infringe on those who weren't affected by the loss. They want to move on. They don't want to be seen as kind of lingering on this. So as someone trying to assist the griever, it's good just to check in sometimes. If you haven't heard from them, just shoot them a text. Hey, I'm thinking about you. What's going on? If you know that there's an anniversary coming up, hey, you want to go get coffee? You don't even have to be like, hey, how's your grief doing today?
Yeah, definitely don't do that.
Yeah, maybe don't do that. But
that's the
just,
foundation. Hey, don't ask that question.
How's your grief? Are you feeling grievy today?
On a scale of 1 to 10, how grievy are you?
I love it. I'm going to put that in my clinic now.
Please do.
But, you just keep it low stress. You don't have to expect a therapy session. You don't have to expect them to be just melting into a puddle. Just, hey, you want to go get a coffee? We haven't talked in a while.
Yeah.
Just keep it low stress. And if you are the person who's grieving, people aren't mind readers. I tell my kids all the time, I'm not a mind reader. You got to tell me what you want. Yeah. Same thing. People can't read your mind. They don't know if they're overstepping a boundary or if they're, not being present enough for you. So I've really had to encourage some of my patients, like, okay, well, maybe you can reach out and say, hey, I'm going into a difficult period. Would you mind just checking on me like every week or every couple of days? I know I'm struggling. Just shoot me a text and make sure, if you don't hear from me, shoot me a text.
Yeah.
Just keep it low stress.
This is an honest question and not like a setup for a shameless plug. Is it appropriate to, for example, share like this podcast episode or any other podcast episode about grief with someone who's grieving and being like, hey, I heard this the other day and I thought it might help you?
I think as long as it comes from a place of love, it's okay.
Not like hey, we're tired of you crying all the time.
Dude, you're such a downer at a party. Yeah. Hey, Debbie Downer, here's a podcast.
Right.
Don't do that.
Okay.
But I think as long as it comes from a place of love, even if they initially react maybe defensively, having it there, you've planted the seed. They might not listen to it that day or that week or that month, but at some point they may circle back around to be like, hey, what was that thing you sent me? And everybody's different, but you gotta come from a place of love. You may not know exactly what they're going through, but you care about them and you want them not to hurt. As long as that's a position you're coming from, that's what's important.
Before we sign out, how can we support our loved ones now in life for when we die?
Be open to discussing it, especially if you know that something is coming up. It's really hard. And a lot of people are just, oh, especially with cancer. I see it so much with cancer. Oh, grandma, you're going to be fine. You're going to fight this. You're a fighter. That can put a lot of stress on the person because there's that expectation that if you die from cancer, it's because something wasn't done enough. The doctors didn't give you enough treatment. The person didn't fight hard enough. The family didn't support them enough. The insurance wasn't good enough. And sometimes, look, death is coming for all of us, period. And full stop. None of us are getting out of this alive, and we're all going to get out in different ways. So if that person wants to talk about it, be open to having the conversation. They are bringing it up because they need to talk about it, because they want to talk about it. They want you to be okay, but also they need to be okay. I can't tell you how many stories I've heard of people who, as soon as the last family member came to visit, that's when grandma let go. As soon as someone told them, look, you can go, it's okay, we're fine, that's when they died. If they are bringing it up, it's because they perceive a need to, whether it's for them or you. Don't shut them down. Being for them means not just when they're nauseous from chemotherapy, not just when they need you to go to the pharmacy to pick up their meds, not just, when they need someone to sit with them overnight. It's being there for that conversation too about, well, this is what I want at my funeral, and I want to be cremated, not buried, and tell people I don't want flowers. I hate, hyacinths. Don't send hyacinths.
Yeah.
Don't bury me with this stupid blanket. Be there for them for that conversation too, just as much as you're there for any other part of it.
And tell me about the resources that you would recommend. Empathic Practice in Pensacola, Florida, where we are, has a grief program. So tell me about that. And then tell me about any other resources that might be available outside our area.
Absolutely. So here at Empathic Practice, our grief program has kind of two parts. One part is based on the grief recovery method, and the other part is based on prolonged bereavement therapy, which the training was provided through Columbia University. So they've done a lot of research into especially prolonged bereavement, that which is more than 1 year and significantly impacting quality of life and function. So we have those two things. In terms of nationwide, grief recovery method has therapists. They're not therapists, they're specialists all over the country, even all over the world. They are available to guide you through their program if you're dealing with grief or bereavement. And that's for any kind of loss, not just loss of people. So loss of pets, loss of children, loss of whatever's ailing you. The government has a mental health website that you can look up resources near you, including insurance coverage if you don't have it. There are several telehealth opportunities if you feel like you need structured therapy. I'm most intimately aware of Doctor on Demand, but there are several very good ones out there. There's a National Association for Mental Health.
I hope this conversation plants a seed of awareness of I just thought of one area that I'm probably grieving in maybe a little bit that I hadn't thought of just because of our conversation right now. I hope that this conversation does that for other people. And since this content is evergreen, I hope it continues to do that and that people can listen and re-listen to get new nuggets and hopefully find some new healing and a new way to live on, even though whoever they love or the situation that they had hoped for has passed. So thank you so much. This was a really good chat.
Absolutely. And if I can make one more suggestion, I find that shame and guilt is so intricately interlaced with grief. And I experienced it, especially when I was getting out of the Army. And that's a whole story for a whole separate time. But the work of Brene Brown.
Yes.
You may know her because she had a Netflix special recently, but I was reading her before she was cool. I'm just saying. But she has several very excellent books on shame and grief, especially if you work in very high stress situations, if you are grieving the loss of opportunities or the shoulda, woulda, couldas. I highly recommend you look into her work on shame versus guilt, especially two books, I Thought It Was Just Me, But It Isn't, and Rising Strong. Those are the two books that I recommend the most frequently to my patients. And it really helps with processing those complicated feelings that kind of get in there and infect your grief as well and make it harder to recover from.
Thank you so much. Those were great suggestions. And again, I'll put the links in the episode description and, of course, in the email. Thank you again. This was awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always a pleasure. I enjoyed this.
Thanks for listening. If you liked this episode, you'll also like the one I did with a PhD psychologist about the difference between sadness and depression. That's episode 88. Stay tuned next week when I speak with a mechanical engineer who explains the utility of exploring consciousness. Until then, keep it curious.